She's an amazing dog mom. And she is a human force of nature. Please put your hands together for Kathryn Fumie.
Hi. All right. First, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are here. We spend a lot of time as humans like deciding if things are good and bad and qualifying them, but I just want to acknowledge that we have made it to this moment. I also want to acknowledge that there are people in the audience who are part of my story, and while I may not name you by name, I just want you to know that I know that you know that I know. Yeah, there you go. So, a reading from my diary, March 20th, 2021. Equinox, Pisces moon. It's been a year, quite a year. A year of coronavirus 19. A year of restrictions, CDC recommendations, lockdowns, pauses, max capacity, 6 feet. Masks, PPE, nurses, body counts, infections, infection rates, positivity rates of, stocking up, listening to the news, 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. press conferences with the health commissioner and or Governor Walz. Of cancellations, rescheduling, responding, quarantining, quarantine, isolation, adjusting timelines, adjusting attitudes. Endless hours, walks, disbelief, sports washing, sanitizer, temp checks, escapes, luck, family, baking, Zooming, a verb and a noun that did not exist in my lexicon before March of 2020. Olympics denied, travel rules, rubbing alcohol, hand washing, social distancing. And then human hurricanes of unjust death. Unjust judge and juror in the form of a white policeman. Of gas masks, go bags, helicopter shutters, and smoke in the air. Of cooking and waiting for Jim's return, to milk of magnesia and helmets, rallies at the Capitol, Governor's Mansion, Star Trib, Government Center, Police Union, George Floyd Square, my first die-in. It's been a year. And here I am, loving myself and the idea of myself more than any time I can remember. All things all at once. Yes, and. Both plus. Also, and. Grief, joy, sorrow, acceptance. So if you've ever been in a show with me, or you've known me for like 5 minutes, you know that the only thing I've ever wanted to be when I had grown up was be an actor. So I've always had an answer to that question. What do you want to be when you grow up? And so I did it. And I have a resume and commercials and a degree and a community to prove it. So March 2020, I have opening night of a show out in Hudson, and the next day we go into lockdown. Bummer. I mean, like at first it was fine because there was so much to do. I thought that COVID was going to come out of every corner of my house. So I bleached everything and I shampooed the carpets and there was all the things to buy and it was fine. But then I sank. I crumbled. Devastated, I think, is the word that I would use. All of a sudden, this thing that I've wanted to do my whole life and I'd been doing, that I'd built my life around, was no longer available to me. I mean, it was unsafe. It was against the law. And this was before we knew if unemployment was gonna come through, and usually the state doesn't really care about out-of-work actors. And I'm on the phone with a caseworker saying, I worked for 3 weeks and I didn't get paid, i.e. rehearsal, right? I worked for 3 weeks and I didn't get paid. And I'm not gonna get paid because, well, we get paid per show, so we had one show, so I got $60. And he didn't get that, but he just said, fine, I'll submit the paperwork and we'll see what happens. And all of a sudden, people were asking me, well, what do you want to do? And I didn't have an answer. And I lost all sense of self. And anything I could think of that I was qualified to do just seemed to put me in danger. I felt useless, and I sank. And I do not remember a lot. Trauma brains do not make memories. So I remembered that I took lots of long, anxious walks trying to figure it out. And I know that having a dog kept me honest. And I know that I had this dark Winnie the Pooh cloud over me at all times, and my very important man person would nudge me and suggest I eat when I hadn't for days. But then spring came, and my container gardens were planted, and it warmed up, and life expanded, as it does in a Minnesota spring and summer. And we went to the lake, and I got a tan, and I summered to the best of my ability because that I knew how to do. And it didn't feel great, but it was what it was. And then Memorial Day. George Floyd. Day one of a new world. If you've ever been in a show with me, you know that I love to cook and I love to share food. So as the city burned, I cooked. I lived in St. Paul, just south of the Target in the Midway. And as the helicopters were flying over and the smell of smoke started to increase, I cooked. I had CNN on one of my browsers, I had NPR blaring from the radio in the kitchen, and on my phone I had Twitter, and thank God for citizen journalists, because without them we would not have known what was really going on. And so while I waited for my very important man person to come back from the fray, I baked teriyaki salmon, and I made this beautiful rice bowl with fresh mango and ripe avocado and fresh basil and green onion from my back deck. And I chopped and I assembled and I waited. And eventually he came back and he emerged from the darkness, from the unrest. He was tired and dirty, and there were snippets of the mayhem just falling from his mouth. And we ate and we slept. And I remember waking up at 4 a.m. to close the windows to the smell of burning. And then the morning came, and this seismic, energetic shift happened inside me, manifesting as grief, manifesting as chaos, manifesting as an uprising. If you've ever been in a show with me, you know that I don't do subtle. I'm like a reverse warhead hard candy, right? So I'm sweet on the outside, and then on the inside, I am puckeringly intense. So I got to work. Mind you, I had no idea what I was doing, but I got to work. And it turns out this very important man person in my life was like a semi-retired punk rock activist from the DNC days. And he activated and he sent me in the direction of a pop-up resource center. And if you weren't around during then, it was amazing. These places, a lot of churches and schools and wherever, people just started coming with their bodies and their donations and their energy and dropping it off or staying and figuring out, what can we do? But he told me first you gotta gear up. So I went to my local Ace and I got contractor strength garbage bags for the cleanup and thick work gloves and a lot of duct tape. And I packed my first protest bag, and I remember asking if you ever stop thinking of the clever things you're gonna put in there, and you don't, preparation pays off. I recommend really good shoes, extra water, snacks, and Band-Aids. And so I went to the pop-up resource center, just as I was, with this burning anxiety in my belly and my brain that could only possibly be partially satisfied by being of service. I mean, no matter what, I was not gonna let my neighbors starve. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I saw needs and I filled them. Moving things, sorting things, using my privilege of vehicle and time and energy, delivering things and buying so much shit at Costco. And I activated my network of friends across the country, and they sent me donations large and small, which I used to buy so much shit at Costco. And I was not alone. Believe me when I say that the out-of-work theater community stepped up. People were out. Yes. We are problem solvers by nature. We go from a bunch of people sitting around a table talking about an idea to creating an entire show and showing it to lovely people. So if you're gonna have a revolution, trust me, you want some stage managers around. You want some of those out-of-work actors who've been forced to amateurly wield a screw gun for the plywood, which we did. And we were out there. We were connecting each other to our communities. We were uplifting each other. We were just trying to make it work, and we were being of service. So this was my day. I slept in. I checked with the pop-up resource center about what they needed for the day. I went to go buy so much shit at Costco, drop it off, go home, do some garden therapy, then gear up for the protest, go protest, and then go home. Or say fuck curfew and continue the work of the people. Wash, rinse, repeat. And please note that not even 3 days before the unrest, going to the grocery store was so terrifying for me that I would sob in my car. And also, this was a time of incredible self-care for me. As a person with a long history of substance use issues and a long, long history of disordered eating, this was no time to starve my temple. So I made chilled beet soup and I drank coconut water like it was going out of style. And one day I realized I unlocked my hippie badge. Yeah. Okay, so seriously, when I was like 11 or 12, I was obsessed with hippie culture. I saw Forrest Gump in my tiny little white town, and I got the double disc, and I was there. I loved the music, I loved the hair, I loved the drugs, I loved the sex, I loved all of the things about it, and it hurt me inside that I hadn't been born then yet. Like that I wasn't alive during the 60s and 70s, like, hurt. Jimmy and Janice and Jefferson Airplane had passed me by, and it was a major bummer, dude. So I'm gardening, and I'm cutting these beautiful peonies as helicopters are flying over. There's a feisty fuchsia and this really light baby pink, and these two women walk by and tell me how beautiful my flowers are. And of course I ask, well, would you like some? And they said yes. So I cut them a few stems, and I could hear protest sounds wafting from the governor's mansion and more helicopters overhead, and I was like, I did it. Hippie badge unlocked. And I say that jokingly, but it was a monumental, revolutionary thing that happened. And I got given this sense of purpose. And I found myself again, and I was grown, and it was Kathryn, and it felt good. The pandemic tried to steal my joy, but it only deepened it. And I learned a lot, and I got scared, and I got tired, and I learned a lot. And I got schooled, and I tried, and I chanted, and I learned, and I was humbled. And if you've ever been in a show with me, you know that I am loud, and I love fiercely. And so I must say that I believe in the unassailable dignity of every human, that their worth is never the question, and that we must not wait till the injustice of being robbed of one's life. We must fight for each other now, while we are alive. And as a friend recently said, if they would have killed you like that, I would have burned down the city too. So thank you.